reversing school budget cuts immediately.
To push for budget cuts to the school system to be restored.
We need our budget restored. We were already underfunded.
Facing yet another year of spending cuts. Like schools across the country, the system faces many challenges.
Budget cuts to New York City schools.
Teachers and parents of New York City public school kids are demanding the money be put back.
Our aim is to provide an in-depth exploration of the challenges students face in New York City due to a lack of educational funding. We conducted multiple interviews with students and teachers to understand the profound impact of educational issues on their academic journey. We aim to shed light on the obstacles hindering educational access and success through interviews from various schools and with people who can provide us with valuable insights such as Sasha Bentley, an education justice advocate. We're gathering authentic voices to shed light on the urgency of addressing educational issues. Let's hear from those directly affected and uncover the realities they face.
My experience with the financial aid process has been so rough because going into the process I didn't have much prior knowledge, and I had struggled with understanding the governmental papers and how to read the tax returns, and that portion I had to do by myself because my immigrant parents they struggle with that. This is their first time too, since I'm the eldest daughter. So and I feel that's something that could be implemented in public schools more, so more information for first-time students or immigrant students, and that applies to the whole college application process in general because until I joined DC, I didn't know what even college was and how I can apply and what was required of me in order to get to get a good education.
I feel a lot of students struggle with this in my school, especially. My school consists of a lot of first-gen students, and you would think that we would have many resources like guidance counselors to help us guide through the FAFSA process, financial aid process, appealing for more. A lot of students don't know that you can even appeal for more financial aid, and they're stuck paying this high amount of debt because they just didn't know and didn't have the guidance. And improving this support resource at our school will help us a lot to graduate debt-free, especially as first-gen students. We gain so much debt and we don't know how to responsibly structure our money throughout our years, and we end up paying over $100,000 in college debt, student loans, and that restricts us from a lot in the future.
I agree, and talking about more of kind of the support that is missing in specific areas of NYC when it comes to schools. I think that one of the things that one of the access problems that we do have are with ESL classes. So I feel yes, ESL classes are something that for the most part people know of, but there should be an increase in ESL classes and instruction in schools for immigrant students, as well as a support group, because remember, NYC is such a vast place where you have a lot of cultures and a lot of languages as well, and an immigrant student coming into a education system where they don't have a support group, they don't feel comfortable, that's scary. And if we can't provide I know a lot of prominent, more well-known schools or more prominent schools might have a better support put in place, but schools typical public schools might not have that support group, and that might create more of a difficulty for your typical immigrant student.
Sasha Bentley is an education justice advocate with a passion for empowering young people to achieve their full potential. With a background in museum education and higher ed, she has spent her career working to create inclusive and equitable learning environments for all students. Currently, she is the Senior Manager for Student Success and College Pathways at the National Education Equity Lab, where, in addition to bringing college courses to Title I high schools across the country, she focuses on creating partnerships and developing innovative solutions to close the opportunity gap.
So what are some changes that could be made within public school to make college more accessible for immigrant students in particular?
It sort of depends. One, on what advising opportunities exist already in a school. So in some schools, they have really robust advising, college counselors who are able to meet with students. I think something that a lot of schools struggle with is having it so that our college counselors are incredibly overwhelmed and have 100 or 120 students they're supposed to meet with about their career trajectories in a given semester or year. And so having more college counselors in these spaces to advise students, I think is one great place we could invest more money in our schools in general. I think another great place is, and this is something that I went to this great conference, it was the National College Attainment Networks conference last year, and scholars were saying that something they wanted more of across the board was more knowledge about career paths and potential experiences, getting a sense of what it means to go into a particular career path, because the responses are rather limited, but it would be so great if students got to hear from people who are doing incredible things, but it's not things you hear about in high school. You don't necessarily hear about it till like you're at the end of college or even further down in your career when you realize something like this exists. So I think something that'd be really easy and really useful for immigrant students in particular is like more exposure to the different types of careers. Lastly, I think something else is more engagement with parents, because that's something that I know we're struggling with as an organization. Like, how do we better engage the parents of our students as part of this process? Because going to college isn't just about the student, right? It's about your family, and maybe you want to be closer, maybe you want to be far, maybe you have only a certain amount of funding that you can put toward college, or maybe you have to pay for it all yourself and you're trying to figure that out. But helping parents be more aware of like what that college process looks like, so they can also support their child, their students, is a huge part of this. And I think that organizations and schools that are finding more ways to engage parents so that they know what their kids are going through in this process and can better support are figuring it out really well. And I think serving their students better.
But do you think that like immigrant students are at a disadvantage by like through the resources that are already provided by like these public schools, but they aren't meeting the needs of these students?
Somewhat dependent on the school, because some schools might have higher immigrant populations and then they're like, oh, okay, this is an issue that we need to deal with like ASAP. And so they end up figuring out ways to better serve those students in those communities. I don't think that immigrant students are worse off. I think that there is potentially just more of like that initial barrier in having to overcome either like cultural norms or differences and or like language barriers, which is a big one. And like I said, I think again, connecting with parents, especially if it's like immigrant and first gen, that you end up having kind of like not double whammy, but like a couple of different hurdles that you might have to get over in order to kind of like understand the process a little bit better. Because it also might be that your folks, if you're from an immigrant community or from an immigrant family, your parents might have gone to college in a different country, and that's great. But like the college systems in different countries are like crazy different sometimes. Like even between the US and England, it's drastically different. So it can be difficult sometimes just to like navigate what those differences are. But I think that, again, a lot of it comes down to students having to advocate for yourself a little bit more, and knowing how to advocate for yourself or where to go to get that assistance.
Do you think there would ever be a time where like educational disparity doesn't exist?
My dream is that our organization doesn't need to exist anymore, because we have educational equity. And so it's like, great, well, job well done. Everyone can access the things they need. I think it's going to take a while, because there are so many other kind of issues that like underpin educational disparities, or educational inequities in different places across the country, but also even within the same cities. But I do think that there is hope. I think that that is why so many great organizations exist, trying to kind of lessen those opportunity gaps and those equity gaps. And I think it's something that we're going to have to keep working on in general, just to elevate the importance of funding education more broadly in the US. Got to pay our teachers more. We got to make sure that our students have access to all of the great, counseling and advising that they can get. But yeah, I do think that there is hope for us yet.
What kind of access problems are specific to New York City?
I can't answer it specifically for New York City, just because our model is so national, and I haven't dug into the data to see like what exactly New York is dealing with that Kansas or New Mexico, aren't. But I will say, just like overall, students of color in general are not taking advantage of like AP courses at the same levels as their Caucasian counterparts. And so that's something that we hope that in our efforts to really work, exclusively with Title I eligible high schools, that we're reaching more students of color and giving them this opportunity to access real college courses that, again, similar to AP, like show your college readiness, but do so with a real college course. And so I think that the access issue is really around sort of also that mismatch, right? So something that our CEO heard when she was working for the Obama administration, and consulting with them, that they had a real issue with is that these like amazing colleges and universities were like, oh, we just have such a hard time finding really like academically successful students of color. And it's like, well, you can find those students when you're looking for like a new basketball player or someone to fill in your like football team, but you're saying you can't find high academic achievers in these same school districts and neighborhoods. And so that was a bit disconnect that our CEO was like, no, that's not true. Let's make that connection for you then. That's what we can do, is we can show you these students from these like underserved or under-resourced school districts who are amazing, and just you weren't looking in the right places. Let us help you find these kids. And so I think that's probably one of the big access issues, is just like helping students really get their name out there and connect with these colleges and universities that want them, but we're really sure where to look before.
So I'm going to answer for the school in general. I think as a school, we try to provide all our teachers and classrooms the materials that they need to prepare our students for a higher education and post high school opportunities. So we try our best to give teachers and students everything that they need, whether it's materials, the latest technology, right? We have smart boards, Chromebooks for every student, calculators for students, so that access is not a question.
Having a short budget or like funding, I feel like it might not directly impact our education, because I feel like we always have the supplies we need within a classroom to function and to like, you know, like learn together. We have like technology, we have like pencil, paper, all that we need. We have those type of materials. However, I do feel like it does impact our education in the way of how interested the students are within the school grounds and how the students talk about the school. Because like one of the big things that the school talks about has like, we don't have enough trips, we don't have enough extracurriculars, we don't have sports, that's like, those are like the main complaints that our school has, and it is directly involved around the funding that our school gets, especially now with the seniors. This might be the second year the seniors don't have their senior trip, again because of the fundings and how expensive things are.
How does funding relevant to class sizes impact your ability to effectively teach students?
On enrollment overall. So like the biggest question that comes up a lot is how many kids we're going to get year to year, and that also changes every year. So, and sometimes we're told one thing and then it just turns out that many students don't actually show up. So the biggest impact that it has is in October when our roster gets sort of finalized. Sometimes the DOE comes in and like can take money from us or give money depending on how our enrollment matches the numbers they promised at the beginning. So our budget is based on what they promised at the beginning, and that's always really a stressful period in the year, because it's like it's hard to make plans for the long term if you know at some point money's going to get taken away. And for a couple years after the pandemic, they didn't take that money away. It was really nice, and you could make those long-term plans. But it's just really the fact that it's not a given year to year is really a challenge. And the fact that so much is dependent on enrollment and we have very little control over enrollment is also really just complicated and stressful when we're trying to think about what we're doing and what plans we can make.
Do you feel you have the adequate resources to prepare students for higher education?
Specialized high school, we have students who are generally very motivated, and that makes a big difference. And like, because our students had to take the SHSAT to come in, there's sort of a base level of achievement that they have demonstrated. And so on some level that makes it easier for us preparing students for higher education, but I think it's so much harder because we just don't have a lot of money to make it better. Like, we don't have money for a lot of after-school programs. We don't have money for new laptops. We don't have money for smart boards that are less annoying. Textbooks, like, we don't have textbooks for some of our classes because we just don't have money for them, which makes it hard. But I think it's a really long answer to your question, but I think, no, I don't think we have enough resources, but I think that at our school we're able to make it work because we have awesome students that are gonna be motivated and not as likely to get frustrated.
Outside of like textbooks and laptops and storyboards, like what other resources would you expect the DOE to give you, like to help you better reach this, like prepare your students?
I mean, the biggest resource would just be letting us have smaller class sizes and therefore giving us more staff to support that smaller class size, right? Mm-hmm. So like, if we could hire an extra math teacher, we could take 10 kids out of every math class, and then that would just be a lot more one-on-one support. It would be less grading load and letters of rec load and all of those things that we have to do. So like, the biggest resource would just be more people. Like an extra guidance counselor, like all those things, and just like an extra person would help in so many ways.
How do you think the level of funding affects the quality of education at your school? Are there specific areas where you see lack of financial support having a significant impact?
Yes, okay, so I think if we compare our school to another specialized high school such as Stuyvesant or Brooklyn Tech, I feel like there's definitely, you can definitely see the effects of funding when it comes to extracurriculars specifically. For example, there's a lot of kids in our school that really want like a robotics team or more advanced competitive team where we are able to send our kind of students and members to competitions, but we don't have the amount of money and funds to do so, mainly especially because I guess the school doesn't get a lot of money and we don't also get a lot of donations, and so more oftentimes than not the students themselves have to raise money for the school, so we would have to host our own bake sales and our own fundraisers in order to fund our own clubs. And I think that with that, even though we see the effects of how fundraising can help our club, I feel like it'd be a lot easier if we just had the resources already there so that we could kind of just, I don't know, like kickstart it a little faster. Because this is also a shared building, we aren't able to have a lot of kind of classroom space to be able to just like allocate resources like effectively.
Can you speak to the level of support and engagement you receive from teachers and staff? How do you think their workload and resources impact the learning environment?
I think the amount of support and engagement from our teachers is very well respected. I feel like all of the teachers here in our school really care about their work and really care about their students, and that definitely reflects in their teaching as well. I feel like a lot of students aren't afraid to ask their teachers questions or go to their office hours and ask for extra help.
As we conclude our interviews, it's evident that the lack of educational funding in NYC schools is a pressing issue with far-reaching consequences. From the first-hand experiences of students and teachers, we've witnessed the challenges and disparities that hinder academic success and future opportunities. We must heed these voices, advocate for change, and strive for equitable access to quality education for all. The insights gathered here serve as a call to action, urging stakeholders to prioritize educational funding and ensure a brighter future for future generations.